hanging out. It was like the second night that we were hanging out, and he drew me, and then I sang for him. Yeah.
I mean,
is this or is this not the dream, ladies and gentlemen?
The funny thing is, so my father plays music and sings. He plays guitar and sings. My whole life, he always played music and sang. He sings those boleros and rancheras and cumbias and all the traditional Latin music. He has that old voice, like old phonograph style of voice, like from the 30s or 40s. Like he has that old, like with the vibrato and all that stuff, like very romantic old style. That if you put it in black and white, it sounds perfect. And my brother also plays guitar and everything. So in my family, it's very normal to be sharing your talents. Like it's not like a weird thing or like trying to impress somebody.
Or like you immediately need to do it to make money and get a million followers.
Correct.
Like it's just a part of who we are as human beings.
Correct.
It should be celebrated by our loved ones, regardless of like the numbers on a screen.
Absolutely. No, that is definitely part of it. So yeah, when we first met, she was obviously seeing me paint, so I was sharing my art. So the minute she told me that she sang, I was like, oh, that's cool, my father sings, like I would love for you to sing. And she just jumped on it, and that bravery to like just share and be open and share her voice with me, I was like, wow, that's really impressive. So that obviously caught my attention. And then I immediately I was like, wow, it would be amazing. I remember we even talked back then, like amazing if you could sing with my dad. Like I think that would be so cool.
Yeah.
And
then a couple of months later, I came to visit him here in New York. And I met his dad for the first time, and then we sang there. I was like super shy, because it was my first time like meeting him and singing together and everything. I was like, oh my god, it's like
it takes the parents to another level. Not only do they have to like you as a person, it's like, oh,
exactly.
That was off key. don't.
No, but yeah, then I met my father-in-law at that time. For the first time, and then I moved to New York in December. So it was like super fast, but like worth it.
Hey, it lasted.
Yeah. And then shortly after we got married, and the rest is history. We've been navigating New York together for 10 years. Yeah.
And we get to enjoy everything that you create and share. Like you said, aunque sea para nosotros, suena tan hermoso. Even though it's for us, it sounds so good, you just gotta share it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's move on from Carla's music to Cortez's music. And I'm so sorry, I keep calling you Cortez. So your artist name is CortesNYC.
Well, CortesNYC is my online name. Okay. For years, so that's why it became CortesNYC. But like really, my tag is Cortez.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what people know me as Cortez. That's.
Yeah. Okay. It's hard to know where to start with you because I did research into your creative career. So did the graffiti and the visual art did come before the music, or were you always doing a little of both?
I was always doing a little of both. When I first started doing graffiti, I was also DJing. So my like I said, music was always in the house. So my brother was DJing at the time. I mean, it was very common in the 80s for everybody to have records and 2 turntables and a mixer. It was very common that, if you had a party or whatever, you would offer to bring the turntables and the mixer and be the DJ. Like literal DJ, not.
I know some folks that are trying to revive turntablism.
Yeah, that's still around. It's still around. So back then I was taking turns, DJing, kind of practicing that, but also at the same time, doing graffiti and practicing that. So it was always in my life, music and art together. And eventually, at a certain point, I realized that, I had other friends. I had a lot of friends that became real DJs, like paid gigs and all that. One of my friends is Camilo, DJ Camilo. He was on Hot 97. Still travels around and does big gigs in New York and around the world. And I met him back in those days as well. He was younger than me, and I saw that he was taking it so serious that I realized the way that he was taking his stuff serious, I gotta take my art just as serious. I think that you come to a certain age when you gotta pick your lane and say, okay, if I'm gonna be, I can't be so-so at everything. I gotta be good at something or great at something. And I think once I got into like high school and college, I really saw that graffiti, street art was my calling. I just had a...
And you had an exhibition recently at Culture Lab,
Yes,
right?
yes. I exhibited at Culture Lab recently here in Long Island City. I had one of my newer paintings there.
We forgot to talk about your baseball. I told you we were going to talk about your baseball.
Yeah.
She performed at a stadium.
Yeah, it was in Hudson Valley, upstate New York, and they were celebrating the Puerto Rican National Day. So I had the honor of singing the Puerto Rican National Anthem, and all of this actually thank you to the community, like thanks to Instagram, to TikTok, all of that, because the opportunity came up because one of the DJs of a radio station that is called Triple Threat FM Radio.
Yeah, still.
Yeah. He first we met through TikTok. He contacted me. He was actually saying that if there was any upcoming artist that wanted to get interviewed or get their song playing in a radio station, to hit him up. So I did. Then we got an interview. Then I met other DJs in the station, and we created kind of like this community that is really cool. And that they're very supportive of my art and of my music. So like you, Sarah, like there's a lot of people out there that actually wants to help new artists and new music. So
I think it's good to hear voices that are very genuine, because if you're just listening to what Spotify is trying to get you to listen to, that's automatically the folks that have already had a tremendous amount of money and other hands invested into the project. Now I'm going off topic, but you know, it's good to listen to folks also that like feel like live in our neighborhoods. Like I was looking for this QueensNYCMusic. You're watching probably from here.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I want to listen to people that I can physically come see in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I think there's some spiritual energy that gets a little lost or twisted when a song has been by too many hands through too many companies sold to you from top down. Maybe I'll cut this because I'm really venting, but the point was you had an exhibit at Culture Lab in Long Island City, and you performed at a baseball stadium.
Yeah.
Where was that?
It was in Hudson Valley in upstate New York.
What was the name of the team?
The Renegades. The Hudson Valley Renegades.
So we're talking to local
but in
New York
yeah.
artists you were at, and I felt bad because we had moved on to you, but I forgot to ask you.
That's totally fine.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was just gonna say, like, shout out to DJ Echo, because you know he reached out and he was like, Carla, I have the perfect opportunity for you, and I was like, yeah, what is it? Singing the national anthem, the Puerto Rican national anthem. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
You know, it's okay. What? So yeah, I was super excited because it's the first time that I do something like that. And you know, the people over there in Hudson Valley, they were so lovely. They were all happy to hear, I guess, like a real Spanish voice.
No, because you have an authentic voice. And you can't fake that.
Yeah. So yeah, we had a great time. It was awesome. Yeah.
Gigs are good. It's good. It's good to talk about. We were talking about the video component for a while. We were talking about the online component. But live music events, you said before that sometimes when you felt stuck and you needed to recapture the magic, the connection between people, singing to a stadium full of people. Your home's national anthem. That's got to be a special connection.
Yeah. Totally.
And you've had many chances with your graffiti to connect with people.
Yeah.
You've had your work so many places that I noted down. But along the 7 train, especially where you grew up. And didn't you work with hip hop artists such as J-Ru and Wu-Tang Clan?
Yeah.
Really?
So
and did music videos?
Yeah. So that was where I was leading to was I always had a connection with music. You know, my art and my music. You know, art and music connected. And when I kind of gave in to saying, well, I'm gonna just focus on the art side of it, it opened up like a hole in my life for musicians to come in. You know, once I stopped being both and I just let my art speak for itself, then suddenly musicians were kind of filling in that gap of me listening, having an ear to their music.
To create something great together.
Correct. And the collaborative process. And you know, back then I started doing art. This is like, I would say 91, 92. I started doing art exhibits in Manhattan, down by, now it's by the High Line. What is the High Line now? Back then it was just, you know, prostitution and things like that, drugs and stuff in the streets. And there was a loft there that we used to have, a factory that we used to have parties in. Second floor we'd have the art exhibit, downstairs we'd have a party. And in that venue, DJs and people dancing and drinking and having fun, and your pieces are up on the walls, you know, is where I started meeting people that opened me up to the music industry. So I started meeting, I met a guy, Daniel Hastings, who was a photographer. Back then he was very young and he was just starting out, but he had his foot in the door and with some local up and coming artists, such as Jerry the Damager, Wu-Tang, established people like KRS-One. At that time he was already established. People like Jay-Z was coming up and he shot some stuff for Jay-Z. We had our foot in the door with magazines back then, like the Source magazine. So I was featured in Source magazine for my art, but at the same time, if there was an ad for a rapper or something, my art would be on his cover, or it would be his logo that I did, or whatever, things like that. So at that time, that was the social media at the time, where these magazines and my art was all through there. So just like that, things were buzzing. Paper magazines.
The social media of the time.
And back then, yeah, I got to do 36 Chambers, Wu-Tang Clan. I was there for the photo shoot. I was helping, assisting, doing whatever, like lighting, helping the camera, changing lenses or whatever. Just like how he was a self-taught photographer and videographer, I also was just picking up on whatever I was seeing, kind of learning, and then interacting with the artists, because that was something that I had in common. Was they were young, we were young, and they were just starting out. They didn't see the future. They were just kind of like doing what they had there at the moment. And they were doing such inspiring work, and we were creating visuals that were inspiring them, that we were able to just connect like that in a way that, let's say, the record company couldn't connect with them. So they would really send us in almost like, go and play and kind of like make stuff happen, because you guys
see the same language. Think about profits.
Right.
Folks whose job is to think about money and profit are too heavily involved in the actual creation of art. We run into some really soulless bullshit.
Yeah. But to your point about the local artists, those were my local artists at that time. So, for example, you know, I didn't think, when I was meeting people like, let's say, Guru from Gangstar, or, you know, rest in peace Guru, or, you know, people like OC was a huge rapper back then, and you know, such talented people that they would say, hey, we're gonna do a photo shoot. This, you know, but I did stuff for artists like Supercat, a reggae artist, right? Perfect example, Supercat, reggae artist. I don't know if you're familiar with his name, but like, you know,
I'm very unfamiliar with a lot of things.
But he lived in Long Island, and for example, something like that they would say, you're gonna do a logo for him. You're gonna go to his house and meet him and talk and kind of get, you know, pick his ear for what he wants to do and whatever. And I was like, he lives here in Long Island, you know. Or then I would go, you know, Wu-Tang, other in Staten Island. I was like, Staten Island, where are we going? Staten Island? And then it was like, Jay, he's in Brooklyn. Okay, go to Brooklyn. They're smoking blunts, they're hanging out. I'm like, I'm in a brownstone in Brooklyn. I'm like, these are just regular people making up that. Few years later, down the line, 10 years later, you're like, these people are icons. Like, how does this happen? And through that, I think that process of meeting local people, is that I realized I'm playing a role as well in this process, you know. And still to this day, I'm still here, and I'm still in touch with people like Jay, and these people. I mean, I'm 50 years old. They're older than me, and we're still in communication. He's in Germany now. And I'm seeing other artists, you know, I mean, like Miss Mar here.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I love Miss Mar's music.
Yeah.
I really hope she blows up.
And the people that are in the showcases that you showcase in the whiskey bar and stuff like that, that I see these people and I'm like, there's no difference really, other than that the times have changed. So
the saturation, the number of folks that we're competing with as individual musicians is much higher now, because a much higher percentage of the general public is trying to be a full-time musician.
I can see that.
Yeah.
And I think that making music is something that comes, and art is something that comes naturally to all of us, but the pressures now to, like, a lot of musicians feel like they're failures just because they don't have a million streams, and it's really distressing, because I feel like it comes from a culture that is, the videos are great, but there's a bit of emotional disconnect when it's so fragmented. You know, so I'm really glad that we're able to get together in person and have this conversation, because we can feel each other's energies. You know, I think we can find a way to, a complementary way to engage with the music scene in a way that it's personal choice. A lot of it's personal choice. A lot of the folks that play mics that they never want to put anything out online, they're happy that way. A lot of younger folks actually get very uncomfortable on stage, but they're super comfortable behind the camera. And it's just very interesting the way the medium, we want to create through all these different mediums. Do you carry that music that you heard, that you were making the videos for, do you carry those influences into your own music? Can we talk about Behind the Mask?
Yes.
What style, what genre would you label Behind the Mask?
So Behind the Mask is like I would say it's got those boom bap beats from that time period, definitely. Like, if you were to tell me, Chris, here's a drum, the first thing I'm gonna do is go boom, bap, boom, boom, boom.
Oh, that's what boom bap means.
Yeah.
Bap, boom.
That's the first thing I'm gonna do. That's I'm not gonna do anything else. Even though I work with Carla and we're doing reggaeton beats and stuff like that, it's not natural for me to gravitate to that. I still have that rhythm in me. I walk with that rhythm. I talk with that rhythm. I speak with that cadence. I have that New York thing in the way I speak, in the way I communicate, the way I use my
technical difficulties. But we are now talking about Behind the Mask by CortesNYC. Tell us about this pandemic album.
Right. So Behind the Mask started because I wanted to do first of all, I wanted to bring together all these different songs that I had, these instrumentals that I had, under one theme, and I was looking for a new theme. And at the time, we were like right before the pandemic that I was kind of gathering the songs together. And then once the pandemic hit, obviously everything stopped, and I kind of like stopped, and everybody was kind of stunned for a bit. And then as we were also doing a podcast at the time, and I was like, well, a lot of things were happening in the world, and we were just kind of like, what are we supposed to do right now? I don't know what to do right now. We were very scared of what the future was going to be like, and it seemed silly to make music or to do a podcast while the world is upside down and we don't know what our lives are going to be like in a year. So many people were moving, and people were trying to get out of the city, and there was a lot of like motion and insecurity in that sense. And I mean, having gone through 9/11, at that time, this was getting me PTSD of those days, and I was like, is this another 9/11? How big is it going to impact us? Our food supplies, my job, like, do people even care about what I do, in this condition? I work and I also work for my day job is in sports licensing, apparel. So no games were being played, and everybody was getting laid off, and my job, my company got cut down in half. I was blessed to still have a job, but like all these things that were happening were so like just really you couldn't avoid it. It was
world shattering. It felt like we were in a war.
Right, and you didn't need to go too far to find themes. I think is what happened to me then, is that I realized like themes were unavoidable, and I'm big at picking up on themes and like algorithms. My brain works like that. So like things like hearing the word furlough get used over and over again, and I was like, I never used this word growing up, and now all of a sudden that's all we do is say furlough for everything. People are being furloughed, and I had to learn what furloughed means as an adult. Things like we were talking, people were talking about essential workers, you know, and not nothing against it. I was kind of
You had that song like who or what
define
is
essential. Define essential. That was important to me. Like define essential because just
and
because,
nowadays those workers are being treated like garbage. They were heroes 3 years ago, and now they're garbage. It's garbage
for a couple of months, and then
and I mean, you know, as well, you know, during those early days, the question of like, could we ever hear live music again? Are we ever gonna have big stadium performances again, or is it worth it? And I think that's where the stuff started brewing in my head, like define essential. Like, is essential just health, or is essential mental health and spiritual health, and music and arts are also essential, but they were devaluating it. They were making it seem like it wasn't essential. So there was things like that were like kind of just brewing in my head. The title of the actual album, Behind the Mask, came to me because I was realizing at that moment we were all wearing masks, and I was like, you know, I spent so many years not wearing masks, spray painting, and having people tell me you should be wearing a mask, and I never wear a mask. Even to this day, I'll spray paint without a mask. It's not. I'm from that generation that it didn't seem right to advertise that you're spray painting. If you're spray painting, you're doing it quick and on the low. You're not advertising it with a whole getup to go paint. So it was funny to see everybody wear masks, and I was like, that's so funny. Like, and I was telling Carla, like, look, everybody's wearing masks now, and for all these years, people told me to wear masks, and I never did. And then I started realizing like the stories behind the mask, and I said, well, that could be a time for me to talk about myself as the identity of a graffiti artist or an urban artist, street artist. The stories behind the mask, behind the spray paint, because I used the aerosol mask on the cover. But then also the stories behind everybody else. Now we're all wearing masks. And also the
themes of like surveillance and like authority, fear,
media consumption.
Yeah,
media consumption, because we were getting bombarded at the same time.
No, and we were all following the media, was it TV
Trump
or
and all this crap,
and because we wanted to know what was happening.
Even our governor. You know,
yeah.
how he turned out to be
That
for
was,
a minute. He was
Cuomo,
that was like that was like a ritual. During quarantine, it was a ritual. You wake up, put the TV on, let's see what they're gonna say, what's the status. But after a while, how media consumption is, that song, that is like all of these voices, that's what was happening. You were hearing all these voices that you were so out of everything that...
And who can you trust? Because you as a graffiti artist have a natural distrust of authority, and the authority was clamping down, and I really heard that in the album.
Yeah, I mean, media consumption, I'm using samples. I use little samples of Cuomo, of Trump, of people talking about also media consumption. Just there was reporters talking about like the youth and what the media does to them, and video games or whatever it does to them. So I was also kind of grabbing sound bites of that. There's a quote in there, like a little sample. Somebody says, you know, anybody can post anything online, you know. And it's so true, like, yeah, like we're in a time where everybody can post anything, but what's worth posting, and what do you really want to believe, and what do you want to follow, and what information matters to you online. So there's a lot of stuff in there about that. There's other songs in there, like, you know, the ones
La Ley Eterna,
yeah, La Ley
which
Eterna.
she just released a music video for that everyone should go watch because it's so trippy.
Yeah.
It feels like you're having a little acid trip, sober. I watched it sober.
Well, actually, that music video those animated music videos were done by my son.
Wait, I didn't know. I misspoke. Your son made that?
Keanu, he made that. So his handle on YouTube is Sushi Beats 420. So he dabbles in animation, but his imagination is
I forgot. I must
world.
have tagged him and I just forgot and assumed it was you. Incredible art.
I collaborated with him. I provided a lot of the actual graphic work, and then he animated it and his vision of like what he needed. After a while, I was like, just tell me what you need. And he was like, give me spaceships, give me aliens, take this and cut this out from it. And he just started directing it. And I said, you know what, this is your video, like just go all out, just let your imagination pour out.
But in terms of the song, like we're talking about the theme of pandemic, and how does an album like this hold up a few years later? Obviously, we're still having several crises, climate crises, whatever, economic crises, but how does that album hold up when the songs are so thematic? But that song, La Ley Eterna, is about time. And time comes for us all. And
that's
that's an eternal song. That song is always going to hold up And you wrote it during a time of one crisis, but it holds up for other crises.
Correct. I mean, the funny thing is, I'll still have people commenting on it and sending messages about it as if they heard it for the first time, and I'm like, that's great, like that's really cool. Those songs with Carla actually came out of the same period of time where we were working on Carla's music.
Yeah.
And like I was saying, you know, Carla's music and Carla's inspirations are more on a joyful side, but I know she has a dark side as well. She's a little gothic as well in her own way.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, look, why don't you experiment on my album? I would love to have. I've already done 3 collections of music. I'll call them albums. In the past, this Behind the Mask is the first one that I distributed, and it was our experiment at distribution. We're like, let's just try, let's see what happens. Is it worth doing? And I said, well, if I'm going to make this album, it would be great to have vocals. Carla, it would be great for Carla to sing something in English because her music is all in Spanish. I said, well, why not on my side of the universe, in my multiverse, here, sing some English songs, get some English lyrics. We started taking songs that, to me, kind of either resonated with me or the lyrics resonated, and I asked her to rewrite them and kind of refigure them out for herself. I was mashing up also like hip hop songs like Mobb Deep and other like recognizable. I've had people tell me, "Oh, that sounds like a Tropical Quest," or "That sounds like that," and I'm like, "Yeah."
And a lot of the album is instrumental,
Yeah.
very experimental.
Yeah.
And then the vocal parts of it, I wanted that haunting kind of sound. I wanted that like Portishead or Massive Attack or these like
Rat Attack?
yeah, like Massive Attack. It's like
No, I'm just curious if you like Rat Attack.
oh yeah.
I heard Rat Attack.
Yeah. No, so
Different.
those kind of like haunting vocals with like a drum loop and samples and stuff like that. So I wanted that kind of sound, which Carla is definitely different from what Carla's usually tackled. So I thought it would be good to get her out of her comfort zone, get her tackling some dark ideas.
I think that was actually easier
and it was
than
actually
working in my own music.
it was actually
It's less pressure sometimes.
Yes.
As a singer, it's less pressure to work with other people sometimes than try to deliver your
And I feel like what was interesting about that project was that I created my own melodies kind of like on the go. Just I didn't some of the La Ley Eterna, I got the lyrics from Robbie Draco Rosa. A Robbie Draco Rosa song. He's an artist from Puerto Rico.
Oh, I didn't know that. So those words about time and eternal law.
She lifted some of the parts of the song.
What's his name?
Robbie.
We're putting this in the article.
Robbie Draco Rosa.
You can send that.
Yes, I'll send it to you. But I took like some of his.
We're gonna run out of time on the thing. So professional. 10 minutes. So we're at the 10 minute mark.
That's okay. So my only point that I want to make is so the vocals and on these songs like La Ley Eterna, Tonight
The Night Is Ours.
The Night Is Ours.
That was the one happy one where you're like, let's forget the world's burning and just make sweet love.
Exactly. So you caught on to that. It was very transparent. It's like very on the nose, those subjects, and that's where I wanted to plug those songs. That one is actually inspired by Natalie Merchant.
Oh, interesting.
Tonight the night belongs to lovers. That song. Yeah. We kind of like took a little bit of that and kind of like made it our own. Yeah. But those kind of things, I think, were what we were living at the time, and I think that's what made the album meaningful, at least. Even though, let's say, the whole world didn't hear it, but the few people that did get to hear it and actually reacted, it was a positive reaction.
It captured that energy.
And it captured that energy. And like you said, it can be timeless because, even though it was the pandemic that woke it up, it's things we were already living. It's just that the pandemic kind of packaged it.
Like the themes of our relationship to authority.
Exactly.
And trying to figure out what sources of information are reliable and what aren't. Trust, paranoia.
Yes.
Mass media.
Yeah.
I would say it holds up. I would say it still holds up a couple of years.
Yeah,
later.
I think there was things in the like on my mind is another one. There's just subjects there, or waiting in line also. Standing in line was the other one. Yeah, there's this thing about,
hold the power in yourself. You have to hold that will power.
Yeah, those kind of things are the things that, like, I think those are forever. Like, and if I've already thought about the next project I want to do, if anything, I'm probably going to take a few of the items and kind of amplify them up and see where they take me there. But I think what we're living now is a little different than what we're living then. Some things overlap, but I think looking to the future, like what I've been looking at now, is just kind of like a little bit of this like fighting algorithms. Like I feel like I'm seeing algorithms in everybody, and I keep saying it, but I just feel like there's online algorithms, and then there's algorithms that we're all kind of falling in line into. They have like this new ordering that people are going along with, even with this thing like working from home and what are your rights from work? Why are we working in offices? And now all of a sudden we can work from home. And so what was that algorithm that we've been putting?
I hope wealth redistribution factors in to your consideration, because I feel like a lot of these issues would become non-issues if the money and power wasn't in the hands of just a few dudes that are getting sunk by whales.
Yeah. Right.
But just to quickly wrap up before we talked so much about these fantastic ideas behind your work, but like literally, bro, what instruments do you play? Because you play a lot of instruments.
So I mean, primarily I would say the guitar. I know some basic things with the guitar, electric guitar, acoustic guitar, bass. And then sampling, like I'm very savvy with sampling.
What are those tools that you use for a layman that doesn't know about electronic music? What are the tools that you use?
I use the SP404 for sampling and for beat making. I sample drums and I kind of give them effects and I create my own drum patterns. I use the MIDI controller and I use Logic Pro for the music production, and a little bit of like some vocal effect boxing and like doing
Helicon.
But it's mostly those MIDI.
The MIDI instruments. I don't like to do too much electronic pure MIDI sounds. What I like to do is I have actual synthesizers. I have a little Roland JDXI and I'm a micro freak. A micro freak is such a fun tool. But they're small synthesizers that really give you a really vintagey, warped kind of sound, and you can really bend the sounds and do things with it. I'd rather create that and give it that texture and then bring it in.
Treat it like its own instrument, because it does
Correct.
have its
Sounds a little bit more analog.
Yeah, I prefer that to just pure digital. I think pure digital sometimes sounds too clean, and I don't want that.
Or when you hear like supposedly an acoustic song, supposedly it was a band with instruments, but it's been so retouched. It's sort of like how celebrities have gotten a million little facial plastic surgeries. Similarly, people are going to the studio with bands and they're altering every single thing just a little bit, so you can't figure out why it sounds unnatural, because it's like, oh, it should sound like guitar, drum, whatever. But they've done so many little computer. Anyway, we're gonna run out of time. Friends, if you have stayed with us for this entire over an hour podcast interview of Carla and Cortez, thank you so much. My name again is Sarah. Don't know if I ever said it, but hopefully they're going to be releasing more work, and we're going to be doing more interviews here. So follow them, follow Latin Sonic Stereo, Carla de Puerto Rico, CortesNYC, and please keep tuning in to QueensNYC Music. We're going to interview so many interesting musicians of different genres and talk about the music scene and issues facing musicians.